Well, hey everybody, it's Sandy, and welcome back to my channel dedicated to helping you advocate for your own health one topic at a time. So, yay, it's not a product review today. I get to let my inner nerd shine through, but I wanted to talk some about masks because, as you know, I have been talking about masks, particularly some products, and some people have asked me also for some masks that are maybe a little less pricey than something like a Sonovia mask, which I so highly recommend. And based on some of the questions that I've gotten and some of the other masks that I've looked at over the past weeks, I realized that there's a lot of confusion out there about masks, and there's just so many of them out there on the market that some people are going to go on and, just to look for one themselves. I can't possibly review them all, but there's a lot of confusion and a lot of aspects about the description of these masks that's very counterintuitive. And I think that a lot of people buy these masks based on some claims in them that are very misleading. And I just want to talk about that a little bit so that you can get a sense of what might be a product that you'd want to look into or trust a little bit better than others. So basically, when I look into any of the masks that you guys ask me about or ones that I find myself, I find myself asking questions of the manufacturer that have to deal with issues like testing that they've done on the product, certainly if they claim that it's antimicrobial in any way. Most masks are not, they might be like water resistant, and there's some, that's somewhat helpful so that large droplets don't the liquid doesn't sink into the mask. But as far as masks that actually have some technology embedded in them that's shown to be antiviral, antibacterial, those are usually getting up into the more expensive ranges. But most masks are a barrier, and then that has to do with filtration. Filtration becomes the next really important question, and that is very counterintuitive. So some of you who have watched my channel for a while might recall that I reviewed a mask by Argamon Technologies called the BioBlock mask, which in some ways is a great mask, but in other ways it's a little misleading in my opinion. And I had said at the time, just from my experience wearing masks, that the filter that it boasts a filter that it says filters down to 0.12 microns, which is like half the size filtration that you get out of an N95 respirator. And that's very impressive, except for that I knew from my experience wearing masks that even with an N95, a mask has to be properly sealed down in order for you to filter all the air that comes through it, and particularly if you're trying to filter at that small micron particle level. So by that I mean that air will take the path of least resistance, right? So if air takes the path of least resistance and you put something right here in front of the face and then seal it down like you would an N95, seal it everywhere, then it actually has to go through that tight filter. But if you put that tight filter, let's say, I'm just going to get a piece of paper here. Let's say I put that tight filter right here in front of my face. Well, the air is just going to go around it. If it's that tight, the air is just going to go around it. And not only was that my hunch before, but I've since found empirical information that supports what was my theory at the time, that you're not really getting the benefit of what the product boasts in the way of filtration. So this is an article I pulled off the CDC website, and it just goes, it's basically talking about N95s, but suffice it to say, it says in a second paragraph here, thus, the most important aspect of an NIOSH certified respirator's performance will be how well it fits to the face and minimizes the degree of leakage around the face piece. Okay, so yeah, I kind of rest my case. Some of these masks out there, there's a lot of interest right now, and most people haven't worn masks, and a lot of the manufacturers who are making them now, and the retailers who are selling them now, this wasn't their background, so they're not in the business of producing masks. So I don't know if there's one thing going on which might be preying on consumers' concerns and fears about little tiny viral particles, and therefore it seems intuitive that if you find a mask that filters down to 0.1 microns, that's smaller than, let's say, an aerosolized particle of COVID, so that will filter COVID, and that seems like a good mask to buy. And I don't know if they're really just preying on people, or like I said, a lot of these manufacturers aren't in the business of making face masks, so they might not even realize that themselves. But it is really important that a product does what it boasts that it's going to do. And simply putting a filter inside of something doesn't mean that that's actually where you're inhaling through if it's not properly sealed down. So filtration is a little bit counterintuitive. The other thing I wanted to say about filtration, besides particle size, is that Filtration, like this is a good, just a baseline. This is a surgical mask. So this is what we wear in the operating room all the time. It's not like an N95. It doesn't get sealed down. But it has a filter. It's polypropylene. It's made out of, yeah, non-woven polypropylene. Just to give you a sense of what that is, I'm just going to try to get a good close-up of that. Polypropylene tends to have that kind of squares, little tiny squares, waffle weave, like it feels like it's not quite fabric and it's also not quite paper. That's also like this is a shoe cover, like painters' shoe covers are made out of that same, now the camera doesn't want to focus on it, that same polypropylene. Same thing with gowns we wear in the operating room. They tend to be water resistant, not totally waterproof. Well, the filters in the polypropylene products, there people think of a filter like a sieve. So if you think of like a pasta colander, you'd think, well, as long as the pasta is larger than the holes, then when you drain it into the colander, it's not going to go through the holes. That's how a filter and a mask works. Well, not exactly, because a filter and a mask is more like a thicket than a sieve. So inside the filter of a mask of the non-woven polypropylene, it's a dense collection of little fibers that are all twisting and turning around each other. So those fibers will also collect small pathogens that can fit through the sieve's holes. So for example, a plain old surgical mask, which is not designed as an N95 to filter tiny aerosolized particles of virus, will still collect and filter about 60% of, in the study that I'm thinking of, is influenza virus. Okay, so similar, it's still a tiny little aerosolized viral particle. Just because that little network, that thicket of fibers, will tend to hold on to anything that is able to get through the initial impact of the filter. And once it's trapped in there, it can't tend to leave, and it does tend to be deactivated. And some masks have a charge on them that will also help with that. So there's two different, or actually there's three different kinds of filtration, but just to keep it very simple, there's interception, and then there's diffusion, which is the second, less commonly known aspect. So if you're out looking for your own mask, now there's all kinds of things you'll want to look for, and I am shortly going to upload a video where I finally had a chance to try and review a couple of masks that are, not anything like the Synovia that I've been recommending just for the superb antimicrobial quality, but just more basic face masks that offer a good wearing experience and just the protection that a plain old mask is going to offer. But it's like I said, it's a little bit counterintuitive because you shouldn't really I think that you really shouldn't get sucked into the claims of a really tiny, tight filter. I think the tighter the filter they put in there, the less likely it's really working for you, because again, it's never going to be the path of least resistance if it's really that small. So I hope that makes sense. Please let me know in the comment box, because this is a concept that I just sort of suspected just out of my experience. And when I was reviewing, say, the BioBlock mask a while back, I said it, I tried to articulate it in my less eloquent way than I've been able to put it together now. But I'm just glad I was able to find a scientific explanation that really explains and really supports what I just sort of intuitively thought about these. And I think it's just really important that when people go out looking for some of these products, that you just you have to ask more questions than that. Now I'm going to cover a little of that when I go over some of these other masks and I'll upload that video shortly. Like I think in the next couple days, where I looked at a couple of more economical masks that, people who aren't interested in some of the really high-end technology that something like Synovia has to offer, there are some other options for you. It does all depend what you want to trade off, but that's for another video. So I hope this was helpful. Please let me know, and let me know if you have any questions, if I can clarify anything. And by the way, I really appreciate all the engagement. I really appreciate all the suggestions about masks to look at or questions that people have, and I'm really having fun with this forum. I'm kind of learning as I go with everybody, and I want to thank you all for that. And please share. Of course, I'd like to grow my channel. You guys know I don't have affiliate links on my channel because I want any reviews I do on products to be unbiased and trustworthy. But that said, of course, I do want to grow my channel. That's, of course. So please share with anybody who might find it helpful. And until next time, be well. Bye-bye.